What's going on, crew? We're back here at Winnetka Bowl, one of the best to ever do it. Here to answer some more of the questions you guys filed in. So moving forward, make sure you guys filter in some more, and the crew will do our best to make sure we get them answered. Crew out. All right, Mark. So first question we have for you is, I have 1 ball out of 9 that roll over my finger hole with 95% or more with the flare rings, Zen U in this case. The remaining balls roll over with maybe 1 ring. Why is that?
I am not a ball guru expert on that. If it was all your balls, then I would have a better answer. Seeing how it's just 1 ball in your arsenal that's doing that, that's got to be a thing you got to go talk to your pro shop operator about. I've never seen you throw it. If it was all the bowling balls you threw flared, rolled over your finger holes, I would definitely have an answer for that. But for you seeing how it's just 1 ball, it may just be that ball.
All right, understood. I'm a two-handed lefty that has been bowling for 5 years, and I tend to struggle on keeping my hand to the inside. Is there any way I can improve that with other drills?
I'm not a big drill person, but I do know this. If your breastplate faces your down lane target, the break point, I call the Baker box sometimes, then your thumb won't rotate. If your upper body rotates too soon, remember this, your breastplate controls your shoulder controls your thumb. Even though you're two-handed and your thumb isn't in the ball, if your upper body rotates too soon and this shoulder goes forward, then you can't work the inside because that's how your body functions. Remember, bowling comes down to 2 specific things: how your body functions and you're throwing a bowling ball. The biggest difference between the pros and amateurs, the pros use their body to function while they bowl. Most amateurs bowl in spite of how their body functions. So make your body function correctly and your hand won't rotate near as early.
Next question. What's the difference between doing a push away and not doing one? I see so many youth two-handers have no push away at all. Is this beneficial, or does this make it harder to have a swing?
Well, think of it like a swing set. How would you start a kid in a swing set? Do you push the kid forward or you let the kid hang? So if there's no push away, there is no swing. Or the other easy answer is, who's the best two-hander of all time? Without a doubt, is Jason Belmonte. Jason has an old school, like 70s push away. Watch it goes out, he gets the kid pushed forward, and it swings back. If you want a more detailed explanation, please go to my website, markbakerbowling.com, click on the two-handed video, buy it. I go through everything about how to create a swing with a two-hander.
There it is. All right. I struggle trying to find the break point when moving out. Is there a set rule, like for every arrow, move out break point, or move out your break point, move 2 boards?
I'm not a big believer in moving the break point around. If you're playing outside, the break point can be a little sooner because you're throwing the ball towards the pins. I tend to think the break point's always between 42 and 46 feet, 6, 7, 8 board. That's what the Baker box is all about. The poster's at my training center. I believe in a very fixed spot. Why? Because the pins are in a fixed spot. The pins never move. So my break point doesn't. Why? I'm trying to get you to have that 6 degrees of entry angle that the USBC deemed the best entry angle. So your break point can't move around that much. Now, every coach does it different. That's my method. Now, when you're playing right of second arrow, the break point can be as early as 38 feet. The hard part is if you bowl at a center with no down lane markers. That does make it tricky.
What should I work on to get my speed up? I've been getting closer to the timing spot, but my speed is still pretty darn slow.
Well, speed's created by 3 things. How big your body mass is. I'm a big guy, so I've always had natural ball speed. The length of your swing, and how fast your feet move. So, if you're getting close to the timing spot, what I would say is you're going to have to probably, not knowing how big or little you are as a human being, you're going to have to increase your foot speed, and you always want to get closer to the timing spot because your arm is a lever. If you can make your swing longer and your levers are longer, you can get natural ball speed.
Heard. How do I get out of a rut? How do you mentally tell yourself to score better after starting the game badly?
You got to lower your expectations. Too many people get too hung up on striking 200, 220, 250. The easiest way to get out of a rut is to lower your expectations. Try to actually get 9 on purpose and just make the spare. Because if you start hitting the pocket over and over and over, it's going to give you positive feedback. I'm close. I'm getting closer. Sooner or later. But if you're trying to shoot 200 and you're missing the pocket every shot, very, very hard to bowl well. So lower your expectations, try to get 9, hit the pocket as many times as possible. Sooner or later, you'll start throwing 3 and 4 baggers again.
There it is. Do you have any advice on what to do on a burnt house lane as a two-handed bowler?
You better like to play between 5th and 6th arrow. You gotta learn how to walk left, get your eyes hard enough left, your ball between probably 4th to 6th arrow, and get that ball over to 7, 8, 9, 10 at 45 feet. If you're gonna be two-handed, you better put it this way, if you're two-handed, basically, first arrow is a 3rd arrow, second arrow is a 4th arrow, and 3rd arrow is the 5th arrow. You better become friends with the 3rd, 4th, and 5th arrow.
Perfect. All right. Sometimes my ball hits my hip on the backswing, and I use a 4-step approach. Do I need more of a crossover step for my second step?
No, actually that's backwards. Hardly any crossover step in your second step. I'd make your second step go straight under your first step, go under your head. Make your second step go left if you're right-handed. Make your third step go back inside your head. You won't hit your hip on the downswing. People hit their hip on the downswing tend to have a big crossover step, then their second step in a 4-step, their second step comes back in front, and that pushes your third step or pivot step to the right. You don't want that to happen. Straighter first step, little left on the second, pivot step under or slightly inside your head, create a swing path, and you won't hit your hip on the downswing.
If I move my eyes close to my mark, to the dots or closer, will this affect my follow through? I'm having trouble hitting my mark.
I'm not a big believer in moving my eyes closer to me as a target for one simple reason. I'm 6'4". So if I bring my eyes too far back, it really affects the tilt of my head. And if you're over 5'10", 5'11", and you bring your eyes back, with the exception of Wes Malott, of course, if you bring your eyes back, your head tends to tilt. If your head tends to tilt, you tend to throw it with your shoulder. If you throw it with your shoulder, you can't hit a target. I'm not a big believer in bringing my eyes closer. I don't think it makes you more accurate.
Got it. Does it matter if your left foot is straight at the line? Can you explain a stable plant?
Your left foot, depending on what part of the lane you're playing. Once you get inside 12, 13, you're playing 3rd arrow farther left, your left foot can have a 10, 15, 20 degrees of angle towards your break point. Because if your left foot angles, your chest angles, your hips open up, you're feeding the ball left to right easier. I'm not a big believer what happened back in the 60s and 70s where they get their left foot where the toes are left and your heel's up. That brings your left hip back. I'm not a fan of that. So if your foot's straight, that's fine. If you have it open 10, 15, 20 degrees, pointing open to your break point, I think that's fine too.
How do you get a session with Mark Baker?
MarkBakerBowling.com. Send me an email. That's what I do for a living. Since the videos have gotten pretty popular, being a 63-year-old guy that doesn't use YouTube much, pretty eye-opening for me. I'm learning about it. But in the last month, I've had New York, New Jersey, Australia, England, Scotland, Texas, Florida, Utah, Arizona, Nevada. So they're coming from all over. Send me an email, we'll make it work. I will be gone most of July with my son at Junior Gold and doing other things. August 1st, I plan on hitting it hard again.
Got it. For shorter two-handed bowlers, is it better to have a straight arm backswing or bent?
You know, I've been studying that quite a bit, and I have not come up with one that's better than the other. Some are straight, some are bent. Whichever one gets you closer to the two-handed timing spot, when your slide foot gets flat in front of your head and your left arm's parallel, whichever way you can get closer to the timing spot, whether your arms are straight or bent, that's what I look for. But I have not come up with one that's better than the other just yet.
Please explain why your balance arm shouldn't go up, and how do you stop it if that's already your tendency?
If it goes up, it tends to raise your center of gravity. So I'm a big believer in moving the air forward. So when you throw the ball, your hips stay very flat to create a flat spot in your swing. If you raise your left arm up, the tendency is for your hips to come up out of it. The ball swings in an arc, and you're at the bottom of your swing trying to put your move on the ball. If your left arm goes up, your hand tends to roll up to the top of the ball. So then you're hanging out with your thumb and your fingertips, and you tend to come over the top. So the left arm, there's all kinds of rules. The best I saw was Rod Ross. He would take a string and tie it to your wrist, to your belt loop. Then your left arm can only go as high as that string. And that was one way to do it. I've always thought about keeping my left hand below my shoulder, my left arm stay down. But I'm not a big proponent of your left arm going up at release, and definitely not having your left arm go forward at release. That's like getting in a fist fight, things we used to back in the old days. It's like punching somebody with both hands at the same time. You don't want your left arm going forward.
Mark and a lot of other bowling channels talk about using your legs along with Mark's 70-30 rule. But my question is, what can I do to achieve that, and what can I work on exactly?
So the easiest way to think about that is you need to bowl on top of your legs. So like on my videos I've done, how I coach, if you look at the pros, their head and their feet tend to match up. Their first step, their second step, their third step. They're constantly in balance. Not any different as you're walking down the street. Remember this, say you take a 5-step approach. For the first 3 steps, all you're doing is walking and swinging a ball. You don't really start bowling until the last 2 steps, when you go into your slide and put a move on it and fall through. The first 3 steps, you're not really bowling, you're walking. So if you stay balanced for the first 3 steps, the odds of you using your legs more go way up. You always want your legs to be slightly ahead of your swing. That's why the timing spot, your left foot gets flat in front of your head, your swing should be parallel. That means your legs are the power source, not your shoulder. That would make the 70-30 rule. Remember this, 70-30, the reason why I use it, if it's 70-30, that's a swing. Swings create accuracy. You have the numbers 50-50, 50% legs, 50% shoulder, that's a throw. If you throw the ball, you're never accurate and you don't have a consistent release.
Got it. For someone that is getting into bowling after 12 years, I keep muscling the ball and keep hurting my short head bicep. How can I practice to stop muscling the ball and rely on my swing and hand?
You got to change your grip pressure probably. Get that grip pressure light as possible and the ball doesn't fall off. Work on having a really soft swing, soft hands I call it, having a soft swing. And work on your footwork being a little more ahead of the swing. Definitely work on your footwork, definitely decrease your grip pressure. Try to leave flat 10s. People that get psyched up and get pumped in their arm, they're trying to strike too bad. Relax your arm, relax your grip pressure. Try to see how many flat 10s you can leave. After a while, you get tired of leaving flat 10s, but then once you get to that balance and your arm starts hurting, then you can start adding the release back in. But first off, you have to find a way to get rid of the pain when you bowl. Because if you have pain when you bowl, sooner or later, you're gonna get tired of that.
How do I stop over drifting?
First off, I would need to know which way. If you're over drifting to the left, it's not the end of the world. If you're drifting to the right, I'm not a big fan of that. So my rule of thumb is if you drift more than 5 right or more than 7 left as a one-hander, you need to work on that. Again, that would go back to you say you take 5 steps. If you make your second step under your head and your pivot step under your head, it's very hard to drift more than 7 either way doing that. So make sure your head and your feet balance out. That'll help with the drift.
Do you have any advice on making the change from a 4-step approach to a 5-step with a pivot step as a 2-hander? I feel like the muscle memory I've built up is really hard to break out, and every time I try to switch, it's very difficult to find the timing.
Well, I've done a lot of people want to go from 4 to 5. What I tend to do is keep it even. So if you go to 4, I'd go to 6. Just add 2 steps where you don't move the ball, then it's your same 4-step approach. Sometimes it's very, very tricky to change the foot you start with. So a lot of times the people with 4 steps, I've moved them to 6 steps. That way they're still starting with the right foot. The 1, 2, then their approach stops, then their approach starts. You push it out on your first step, which is your 3rd step now. So sometimes if you're having a hard time transitioning from 4 to 5, go from 4 to 6 and just move the ball in your 3rd step. See if some of that feel comes back, makes more sense because you're starting with the same foot.
Do you recommend walking parallel to the lane or parallel to your target line? I walk parallel to the target line. For example, when I'm playing 4th arrow, I will walk straight or a couple boards right. When I'm playing 1st arrow, I'll walk a bit left.
That's usually backwards from most of the bowlers I see. When you play out, walking right's good. When you play in, walking left is better. Because when you're playing in, the lanes are hooking. You're walking away from the hook. If you play out, you drift 1 or 2 right, there's a lot of oil. It's actually advantageous. I drifted 4 left every time. When I played out, maybe 5 or 6. But I tend to drift the same every time. That way my angles were the same. Our lining up was pretty easy. It's very tricky to drift right half the lane and left the other half of the lane. I try to get it down as a bowler who doesn't believe in drifting towards your target. Try to get 0 or 2 or 3 left would be my best advice.
Got it. Any advice to keep my head quiet and chest up as a 6'6", 6'1" 2-hander? I look back at old videos of my bowling and it's something that I don't want.
Well, as a 2-hander, you're going to have spine tilt. because if your head doesn't drop after the ball goes back, you can't get your hands up. If you look at that video of Jason Belmonte, the one I did, first 3 steps, he stays pretty tall, shoulders lean a little bit, but when their swing comes back, that's when your head should drop, because that gets your hands to go up, I call it, for free. If your head drops early, then you have to pull it up. Now, if you have no spine tilt and you keep your shoulders up the entire approach, you're going to be very limited how far this shoulder can tuck under this chin. So as the ball swings behind you and you tilt your head down, that'll let your left shoulder tuck under your chin and get your hands longer to get closer to the timing spot.
How do you know when to adjust to the oil transition if you're striking like the front 9 and feel the urge not to move?
Well, that comes down to your skill sets. So I'll use me for an example. I have the front 9. I know one thing's cracked. My adrenaline is pumping. I would never move left after that because I know I'm going to throw the next one harder. If I get the 10th, the 11th one's faster. Now, sometimes if I have the 12th shot for 300, I would actually move 1-1 right and just throw a BB down there. It's very easy to throw it hard when you're jacked up. And my personality blends into that, so that was pretty easy. If you got the front 9 and you feel like it's starting to transition, your ball's going high, do you like to throw it slow? Then I would move. If you're hyper like me and you're fired up like me, I would stay where you are, move right, and throw it even harder. Play into what you do. Don't try to change your personality. If you're calm and mellow and you like to be smooth, change.
Also, how do you try to stay warm after practice, but it takes what feels like 10 years between shots with multiple people?
I was very lucky. I bowled on tour for a living, 4 in a pair. We bowled pretty fast. I never enjoyed bowling 5-man teams. When I did that, you just have to be ready to bowl, I guess. I don't know. There's no great answer for that, especially if you're playing with people that aren't ready to bowl. I don't know what to tell you. The best you can do is you have to be mentally ready. That's the best you can do. There's nowhere to go, do sprints or anything in a bowling center. That's a very tricky and very legitimate question. I guess I would never sit down too much. I would constantly be walking around when I bowled, seeing how somebody else is bowling, trying to keep my legs moving as much as I possibly can. If you sit too long, that will be an issue.
What is a common problem when missing left? Asking for a friend.
Usually missing left of your target means where you're sliding or you're aiming is too close to each other. I'm a big believer in knowing your numbers, so where I slide to where I hit has to make sense, so my ball will go to the timing spot. So if you're sliding on 15, 16, and you're targeting 10, you'll feel like you're missing left. So make sure where you slide to that target. Now, easiest way to do it, the farther right you are, where you slide and where you aim should be closer. And as you move left, that number should get wider and wider and wider. Like my numbers, if I'm standing at 10, I look 5, a 5-board gap. If I'm standing on 35, I'm looking about 21, so 14-board gap. So as I move left, that from the 5-board gap, it gets wider to where I look as I move farther left in the lane.
What would be considered a high rev for a one-handed bowler?
I think anytime you crack 400. 400 on the rev rate's pretty high. 450 is really high. 500 is not very often. Remember, it's not how high your rev rate is, it's how consistent your rev rate is. So if your rev rate's at 400 and consistent or higher, I would consider that a high rev rate.
Mark, 204 average bowler. My whole life, I've had low ball speed with about 14 miles per hour and about 320 rev rate. Is there a drill for increasing ball speed?
Nope.
Got it.
I'm sorry to say there isn't. I'm not a big believer in drills. I don't think it ever equates to what you do as a bowler, because walking and using your legs is such a major part of how we throw a bowling ball. So the drills tend to minimize the legs and the amount of foot speed you have, and it has nothing to do with your push away, which is very tricky to time everything up. So if your speed's 14 on the monitor, it's really closer to 16 if you read it on Specto. So a 320 rev rate and 16 miles an hour, there's probably a reason why you average 200. It's tricky to try to throw it hard. When people try to throw it hard, they tend to use their shoulder too much. I would just try to keep your speed as consistent as possible.
Got it. All right, last question. I look at the foul line for targeting. Is that okay?
If it works for you, go for it. As somebody who's never been able to do that, Liz Johnson, Wes Lott being the two most well-known people who look at the foul line, I'm sure there are others. As a coach, I need to be able to do everything to help my players. I've spent a lot of time trying to learn to look at the foul line and throw a bowling ball. It freaks me out. I think I'm going to hit myself in the ankle. So personally, I don't teach it just for the fact I can't do it. I'm not saying it's wrong. If it works for you, do it. You can never argue with Liz Johnson's career arguably the greatest female bowler of all time. Her and Marion Ladewig, probably the number 1, number 2. So obviously there's a reason why she does it. It works unbelievably well for her. Obviously Wes is in the PBA Hall of Fame. It worked great for him. As somebody who can't do it, I have a hard time teaching it. That's why I don't.
All right, Mark. Well, thanks for answering all the questions. Till next time.
Hey guys, on the cleanup crew, always enjoy answering your questions. Hope I helped out right there. Keep sending all the comments in. We'll keep doing this. We'll keep answering all the questions, as many as you send in.
There we go.